few months further on, we are a little bit more cautious and uncertain of what is actually happening, particularly on the Africom front. At the sort of time of Obama's election, I think there was a feeling amongst or within Africom that it might well get the chop. There was certainly political pressure, and still is in Washington, not to use a military presence in this way. But what we've seen in the last few months suggests, and it's still early days for Obama, that in fact he is following rather in the lines, in the footsteps of his predecessor in promoting and pushing Africom. And this, I think, is very serious for Africa, and it is not going to do American foreign policy any good at all, because what we're seeing at the moment, in the last few months, there's been almost a replay of the story I've just told you, and the same individuals concerned. That is, the people who took the hostages in 2003, the same people have been taking hostages again now. A very complicated story, I won't go into the details of it, but since last December, that's December 2008, and up until last month. So more hostage takings again by the same people who kidnapped them in 2003. So we know that there is some involvement of the Algerian security forces, and the question is America involved again? Now, in what I have written on this in the last few weeks and so forth, I have been very careful to say that I have no evidence, direct evidence, of America being involved in the way that it was in 2003 and during the Bush period. However, I do not know if the odd phone call took place. Just because I don't have evidence doesn't mean to say there is no involvement. What is worrying is that the Africom and America now, the American government, is now talking again in the same language as in 2003-04. Yes, we've got Al-Qaeda all over the Sahara, this is a security threat and we need Africom, etc. So this is very worrying. Again, as I emphasize, it's early days in the Obama administration. I don't think he's been particularly well advised on this, what's going on in Africa in this particular context. But it sounds very, very familiar. The same place, exactly the same people. The people who assassinated the hostage who was killed on the 31st of May, a man called Edwin Dwyer, who just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, a tourist. He happened to be British, living in Austria. The person who assassinated him and beheaded him was the same person who was El Para's #2, who took the hostages in 2003. The same people.
Jeremy Keenan, I wanted to ask you about Hillary Clinton's trip to Africa. 7 countries. She'll be going to Kenya, South Africa, Angola, Congo, Nigeria, Liberia, Cape Verde. The significance of these countries and U.S. policy in Africa.
Well, I remain a little reserved. It's trips and words are one thing, actions are another. And while, of course, one obviously welcomes this apparent change in policy between the Bush administration and the Obama administration, and if you like, the attempts to reconstruct better relations between America and the rest of the world, as long as America is peddling the Africom idea, and if you like, giving primacy to the military, because this is what is happening. Africom is the front line, if you like, of American policy in Africa. As long as that line is being pushed, we're not going to have really much change in Africa. The present line of giving primacy to Africom, given its history and given what it is doing, is not what Africa itself wants. And I think the question is quite self-evident. Why is it that so far every single country in Africa has said, we do not want Africom? What could be clearer than that? So no matter what Hillary is doing running around Africa, the message from Africa has been, even from rulers who are fairly despotic and certainly by no means very democratic, authoritarian rulers, who have done the bidding of the United States over these years, are saying we do not want Africom in our country as at least a base for it. So until America gets that message on board, loud and clear, and it sees and understands the history of how Africom has developed from this very, very murky past, which I document in this volume, and then the second volume will be out in the beginning of the year. That covers the last 2 or 3 years of what is happening. American-African policy is, sure, it'll improve because it can't get any worse, but it's going to be very suspect, and it is not, in my view, the right path.
British anthropologist Jeremy Keenan, his latest book, The Dark Sahara, America's War on Terror in Africa. If you'd like a copy of today's show, go to our website at democracynow.org. And a very special congratulations to our camera person, Laura Chipley, and her husband, Pierre, on the birth of your daughter. Welcome to the world, Sylvie Julia. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks so much for joining us.